Aloha everyone. Welcome to Kauai. Ikomo mai, come on in. Today we're going to be replacing the alternator on a 2014 Dodge Grand Caravan with a 3.6 liter V6 engine. The owner of this vehicle reported that he recently replaced the battery and then his battery warning indicator light came on. So he just picked up an alternator, brought it over and said, would you please install this for me? So we're going to do that today for him, and we're going to do it step by step so that you can do this at home. Okay, let's jump right on in. So here's a quick tip to make things easier on yourself. If you have the part available before you do the job, use that to your advantage. Look at the mounting on the alternator or on the starter or whatever you're putting in and take a look. So I can see that we're going to have 1, 2, 3 bolts holding this thing in. And you have a good idea of what it looks like. You can see the plug in the back. There's a 2-pin plug. And you can see the battery power output post over here. Has a nut on it. And it's a really good idea to find out what size wrench or socket you're going to need. So this one happens to be a 12. So I already know that this is going to be a 12. I don't have to go fishing around later on. I'll know what I need. Alright, so I thought I would just put my voltmeter on here just to confirm what the owner was saying. And we see the battery voltage at 11.63 volts. So this battery is severely depleted. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to actually remove the battery from the vehicle. And this is not strictly necessary, but I'm going to give it a good deep charge. And here in Hawaii, we are prone to massive amounts of corrosion. We live in a salt spray all the time, so that I can go ahead and treat all the bolts and all the nuts with an anti-seize compound. Alright, so when you're removing battery terminals, you always want to do the negative one first. So I'm just going to go ahead and lube these bolts up just because I've got it here and I'm good to go. Alright, we're going to jack this vehicle up now. So I've got the parking brake set, I've got the rear wheels chalked, I've got the jack on the frame with a lower control arm bolts to the frame, and I have a jack stand ready. So on this vehicle, you actually have to jack up the passenger side of the vehicle to be able to get to the alternator. So when you're jacking a vehicle or doing any work on a car, always follow the manufacturer's service manual to the letter. Okay, before you go any further, leave your jack there, not supporting the weight of the vehicle, and give the vehicle a shake. Give it a good shake just to make sure it's not going to come down on you. Then go ahead and remove the jack, and you're ready to proceed. Alright, let's pull this tire off. Alright, the next step is to remove this splash shield. This thing is held on by a couple of plastic retainers. I see 2 of them. One right here. And one right here. 2 screws holding this thing in. One right here. And one right here. So let's go ahead and take this off. Now we're getting access and we can see the alternator. So this alternator is on the front side of this engine above the air conditioning compressor. There's the air conditioning compressor, and there's the alternator above. So it looks kind of tight. We might have to go ahead and at least remove the bolts for the air conditioning compressor to be able to get the alternator out. But the first thing we're going to have to do is remove the belt. Alright, on this belt tensioner, you want to engage that 3/8 square and you want to move the tensioner counterclockwise to loosen it, and then slide off the belt. And then you just slide it off one of the pulleys and let it up slowly. I happen to slide it off the water pump pulley. Okay, so the belt is loose. And let's just get it out of the way. We're not going to take it all the way out, we're just going to let it hang because it looks like it's in good shape. Alright, the next thing we need to do is to make some room for us to get the alternator out and to have better access to the alternator. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop the air conditioning compressor right here. There's 4 bolts on it, and they are 13 millimeters. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Now make sure you do not disconnect the air conditioning vapor lines. 1 here and 1 here. Do not disconnect those. So the first thing you should disconnect, just to keep it from breaking, is this electrical connector right here going to the air conditioning compressor clutch. So on these Chryslers, they have these little wonderful red tabs that sometimes are really difficult to deal with. But you got to go ahead and pry that red tab out before you can remove the connector. So get to the top of it. I pulled it out. You can see this part go in. Then you press on this connector right here. There's a little tab to press on right in the back, and then pull this connector off. So now we're going to get to these AC compressor bolts. Alright, so you can see this wiring harness right here has an anchor right here on the top bolt of the AC compressor. So just grab a screwdriver, kind of stick it underneath there and gently pry it away. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room by moving this air conditioning compressor out of the way. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bolt off right here that holds this line, just to give myself a little more wiggle room. I decided to remove these studs that hold up the air conditioning compressor. These are E7 female star sockets. This is an E7 size. I'm going to use a 1/4-inch drive ratchet so I can get in there and see if I can get this thing off. Okay, so we have those studs out now, and you can see the air conditioning compressor is free to move around a bit, which will give us better access to those bolts and allow us to get the alternator out. Okay, now that we have the air conditioning compressor loose, we're going to go ahead and try to get to these electrical connections on here on the alternator. Alright, so there's a red tab on this. Anytime you see a red tab on one of these Chryslers, that means you've got to pry something. So for this red tab, you just have to push it back. There we go. But this red tab is loose, and it actually came all the way out. So now there's one more tab you've got to press right here before you can pull the wiring harness off. Press the tab, pull the harness off. Using a 3/8 ratchet and a 13 millimeter shallow socket. Let's see if I can get to him. Not too bad. I'm going to remove this stud right here, which is holding the alternator in. Alright, we're trying to get to the alternator power post connector here. As you can see, maybe you can't see, it's really dark up there, but there is a plastic cover over this, and there's 2 tabs on the cover, so you have to grab it, pinch the tabs, and pull the cover away before you can get to the nut. So there's the nut on the back of the alternator. I'm going to try to get that off now. That'll be the last thing that we need to get off before this alternator can get removed. Alright, nice and gentle so you don't break anything. Alright, we've done a side-by-side comparison of the old alternator and the new alternator, and everything looks good. So we're going to go ahead and reverse the process and install this new alternator. Alright, I didn't film it because I was getting my own way, but the cable is put back on the alternator power output post, and the shield is back right there where the screwdriver's pointing. You probably can't even see it because it's black and it's dark up in there. Alright, I'm going to start running these alternator bolts in with a 13 millimeter. Alright, so now that we've got the air conditioning compressor bolted up, go ahead and put the anchors back in place. You really want to put the anchors back in place correctly on this because it's so close to the exhaust system. So the one anchor there, on, one anchor here, on, and then put the connector on. And lock this red tab into place. Install this bolt right here that I loosened just so I had a little more wiggle room to get the AC compressor down. So I'm going to go ahead and install that right now. Alright, so we've pre-positioned the belt and we're about to put that on, but we just want to make sure it's running through all the pulleys first. I've chosen that water pump pulley as the final pulley to get the belt on, just because it doesn't have a lip and it doesn't have all the ribs, so it'll be easier to slide on and off. Move the tensioner, slide the belt on. Make sure all the pulleys are aligned. Slowly let the tensioner go. Positive terminal on first. So in the beginning I said that I put anti-seize on everything because of our salt. Well, also on the battery you have gases that come out of the battery and cause corrosion on the terminal. So it's a good idea to get a barrier between your battery terminals and the gas that the battery produces. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to start the car up and make sure that that alternator is working. And then if that's working and everything looks good, I'm just going to call it good, but I will charge the battery possibly overnight just to bring it up to 12.6 where it should be. As you can see, we have 14.12 volts, and that's good charging voltage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a quick visual inspection, but it sounds good. I'm just going to look at the belt and take a poke around and look around a little bit. But this job is basically done. Alright everybody, thank you for joining me today on this journey to fix this alternator on this Dodge Caravan. If you were going to go out to a repair shop and take care of this, according to an internet search, it would cost between $523 and $660. So, save yourself some money, do this at home. But if you're going to do it at home, you need one of these. You can either call this a female Torx E7 or a star socket E7. Aloha and a hui ho. You too can do things Hawaiian style.